disclosures, agent disclosures, and every class, particularly certificate of registration classes, it gets, there's a lot of discussion about how the agent disclosures work. There's also a full range of this in the sales course, mostly in the sales courses, and certainly questions coming in a lot from licensees in charge about how this works within their agency. So let's have a look at it. Everybody, thinks that, we don't want conflicts of interest and we need to tell people about it. And what you've got to think about is that the bottom underlying concept or philosophy of all of this is transparency. And you put that other hat up, take your agent hat off, put your normal human being hat on and think about, okay, what would I want to know if I were the consumer? So it's a pretty easy question, really. So then we look at it, and we've got three sections of the legislation that we need to focus on here. So we're going to work backwards. We want to talk about section 47, 49 and 50. I'm going to start at section 50 and work backwards. And most of you who are watching this know I'm a little bit perverse, and so but I think I'm starting with the easiest first. So let's have a look at section 50. And it's pretty clear about licensees who have a relevant interest in what they're doing, or certainly in selling a property. So if the licensee is carrying on the business of an agent and they're selling a property, they are not permitted to, if they've got a relevant interest in the property, they're not permitted to have advertising unless their relevant interest is disclosed in the advertisement. Now, a lot of people, and this has come out over the years, probably the last, 14, 15 years that we've been discussing this in the legislation. It's more about, and you see it on some ads, agent's interest disclosed or relevant interest disclosed or agent discloses interest. So whatever those words are that you're using, they're the right words to use. And when should you actually use those words? Well, again, section 50, section 3, 50, and then clause 3 within that, relevant interest. So a licensed person is deemed to have a relevant interest in a property, and there are 3 points here. If the licensee has an interest in the property, so their name's on title, real simple. The licensee is a company, so here's your corporation, your property corporation, and a director of that corporation is an owner of the property. So it's not necessarily the licensee in charge, but it could be a director of that corporation, whether they work within the agency or whether they don't. If they're director of the corporation that's selling it, it needs to be disclosed, and it's their property. Again, their name is on title. So it's the licensee is a director of a corporation, and it could be not the agency corporation, but a separate corporation, so a separate proprietary limited company, and that company owns a property. So they're a director of the agency, or they're the licensee in charge, or the licensed agent that's selling the property, and the property's in a company name, they're also a director of that. So clearly there's a conflict to be disclosed. So they're really obvious points to disclose. You have to think, whilst they're the legal sides of that, you'd need to think about, well, perception can kill you 10 times faster than reality can. So if there is some belief, if you've got to sit there and think, should I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I, in terms of disclosing an interest in a property. So it might be a certificate of registration holder in your office and somebody else is selling the property on their behalf. So you mightn't go to the same extent. You might, when you talk advertising, let's look at all the points that you would put that advertising into. It starts with the contract, there's the sign, there's the brochures, there's the ads. There's your window display, there's your internet. So, on your own website listing. So all of that would have to have agent's interest disclosed if it was in line with those 3 categories in terms of the licensee or themselves, the license of the director of the company or a corporation selling it. But if, say, for example, it were a certificate holder and they were selling their property through the agency, I would be putting it on the ad or on the brochure or somewhere. So you're disclosing it. So either your competition or generally the general interested public are not going, well, isn't that owned by one of the agents in that agency? Shouldn't they be telling me that? But they don't know the intricacies of our Property Stock and Business Agents Act. So, at this point, it's about erring on the side of not allowing perception to give you a bad reputation. So that's section 50. So that's about when you're selling a property in which somebody has an interest within your office. So that's that one dealt with. Let's now go to section 49. So there's no form to fill in for section 50, just the disclosure that's needed. Section 49, everybody talks about beneficial interest in a property. So what's this? This is about section 49(1). And I've got all these parts of the legislation in front of me so we can get them absolutely spot on for you. So when a real estate agent who's retained by your client to sell a property, they must not obtain a beneficial interest in that property. Okay, really, really simple there. Now, what does that actually mean? That means that if somebody in your office, so you're the licensee, you're a licensed agent, you're a certificate holder, whatever, you are selling a property and somebody else in your office or somebody who is connected to you as the salesperson, we'll come back to what connected means in a minute, connected to you as a salesperson wants to purchase that property, you need to complete a section 49 disclosure document and give that to your vendor. Where do you get a section 49 disclosure document? Well, if you're a member of EAC, it'll be on your resources. It's on their resources list of their forms. And I'm sure other agents, people who sell agency agreements have it as well. But, you know, one of the best places to find it in your best resources is hop straight onto the New South Wales Fair Trading website, put section 49 in there and up it comes. So super easy on that one. Now, so you need to fill it in. You need to give it to your vendor. If you want to discuss that one, ring us and we'll discuss about the many cases that we're definitely aware of where agents have lost their commission because this hasn't been disclosed and the solicitor has identified it as an issue on the way through in the settlement process. And then the agent misses their commission. Guys, don't miss out on your commission when you're selling a property. It's just as hard to sell it to one of your staff or somebody connected as it is to sell it to somebody else. So, you know, we all have the right, if you're working in an agency, to buy a property, and if it just happens to be listed, the property you want or that person wants is listed through your agency, then yeah, there's just some steps you need to go through to make sure that you're complying with the legislation. Now, when it actually says the connections, so it comes down to a close, you know, somebody who is a close relative. Now, the close relative is defined by a spouse, an existing or former de facto partner, a child, grandchild, sibling, parent or grandparent of the person, and that's whether that sibling, child, grandchild is derived through an in-law, so it's either through your partner or your spouse, or a de facto relationship. So, guys, it's, you know, it doesn't matter what flavour of child, grandchild, sibling, parent or grandparent that we're talking about, it's all of them in that category, whether they're in-laws or not, or formal or not. And any other person who has a relationship with the person who it should be in the relationship of a close relative. So that's fairly straightforward about, so it's anybody who is a close relative. So, and the thing is, if you contravene this, there is no commission payable to the person in relation to the transaction. Okay, so, you know, maybe if it might be part of, you know, if you personally are buying it and you're the listing agent, then, you know, that's a discussion you need to have with your vendor. You still need to fill in the Section 49 statement. Whether you've got a really nice discussion happening with your vendor or not and they're really happy about it, doesn't matter. Fill in the Section 49 disclosure so nothing can come back and bite you. Because again, that's not what you need in this industry. It's hard enough to list and sell properties without being bitten on the way through for something that you missed out on doing from an administrative perspective. So, you know, you do all the hard stuff, don't get the easy stuff wrong. So just make sure that you are filling in that Section 49 certificate if you or somebody related to you or somebody related to anyone in your agency is purchasing the property that you have listed. So that's what Section 49 is about. Let's get back to Section 47 because, as I said, we're going backwards. So Section 47, and now this is about your duty of disclosure to clients and prospective buyers of land. So this is really to your buyers. And this is about disclosing, I guess the easiest way to describe this is when you're referring them to a third-party service provider. So, you know, if you're referring them to professional services, mortgage brokers, solicitors, conveyancers, pest and building inspectors, strata inspectors, other agents, whoever it is that those professional builders, pool inspectors, all of those things, if if there is a relationship with you, it needs to be disclosed. If you are receiving a rebate, commission, discount, something, a payment for that referral, it needs to be disclosed. And that's where you use the Section 47 disclosure statement. Where do you find it? Your EAC website again, if you as your industry body, or hop onto the Fair Trading website. So guys, make sure you're using those. Make sure you are disclosing. Remember that transparency is the underlying ethos that you are working towards here. Think about it. Should you disclose it? Yes, you should. Fill in your correct documentation, and then you won't have anybody asking those questions on the way through, and your commission won't be on the line in terms of not getting it. So hopefully that's clarified for some of the people who've been asking that question over the last few days.